Hi there, I'm Natalie, aka Queen of Arcana, and this is my YouTube channel. I'm a tarot reader, and today we're going to be doing a pick a card reading. If you have been feeling stuck and you're not sure how to get out of that funk, then this reading is for you. We're going to look at why you may be feeling stuck and how you can get out of that funk. So we have three piles here. We have pile number 1, which is the Shiva Lingam stone. We have pile number 2, which is the Apophyllite. This is gorgeous. I literally just bought this week. And then we have pile number 3, which is the Moss Agate. So have a look at these three piles. Choose one, maybe more if you feel called to, and then go to the timestamp for that pile. You're welcome to pause the video here if you want more time to choose, but I will see you in your reading. Hey, pile number 1, if you chose the Shiva Lingam stone, this is going to be your reading. I am using today the TrueBlack tarot deck and the Visions in the Liminal Space Oracle deck. I love both of these decks. They are so great, and judging by the cards that I have pulled for you, I don't think that these readings are going to disappoint. So I have 3 cards in this kind of top row just underneath that one single card here, and these 3 cards are the 3 cards that were in that pile that you selected at the beginning of this video. And so these 3 cards are the Ace of Cups, Parasitism, and the King of Cups. And so instantly what jumps out at me is that we have Parasitism, which is this image of somebody who is draining somebody else. So you've got this person who is at full charge capacity here, and they are basically taking all of their energy from somebody else who is just totally being depleted of their energy. If you can see those little battery symbols in the image there. And so what we've got in this card is somebody who is just giving everything out of themselves. We then have the Ace of Cups, which I mean, this Ace of Cups in particular, I mean, look at the image on this, it's just stunning. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous Ace of Cups, and I generally read this card in a very, very positive way. But with this card in particular, with the Parasitism, look at how that cup is literally just pouring out. It is tilted in a way that means it's constantly going to be pouring out. And then we have the King of Cups, and the King of Cups has 2 empty cups, and he's kind of falling backwards. You know, he's not in a very kind of sturdy, stable place, which we generally tend to see with the kings. He is somebody who is literally falling. He's falling backwards. And so with these 2 cards in your reading, what we have here basically is these 3 cards are indicating that you're giving out a lot of your energy and your resources and your capacity. You are just giving and giving and giving, and you are depleting your own resources. You're exhausting yourself, and you just don't have any more to give. And that, I think, is the root of why you're feeling stuck, is that you just don't have the resource to give anymore, to get yourself moving anywhere further from where you are right now. And it could well be that you're giving all of these things out to other people, and that means that you're not having the energy, the time, the resources to actually do the things that you need yourself to get yourself unstuck and to get yourself moving. It's almost like you are prioritizing the needs of others before yourself. And you know, what comes into my mind as I'm saying that to you is you always have to put on your own oxygen mask first if you're on an aeroplane before helping others. And this is the key to the message of your reading here, is that you need to learn how to put your own oxygen mask on first, and that will enable you to help other people more. Because if we look at these 2 tarot cards, the Ace of Cups is a really positive card, and the King of Cups is a wonderful court card to be. And these 2 cards are present. And so what this indicates is you have a massive, massive heart. You're very generous, and you have an ability to to give to other people. You want to give to other people, and that's brilliant. It's a wonderful thing to want to give to other people. But it's about finessing that and learning how to kind of harness that to your highest good and to the highest good of others. Because in reality, when all you're doing is draining yourself and allowing people to drain you, you're not going to be able to show up as your best self, because you're constantly depleted, and therefore you can't give your best to everybody, because you are just running on empty almost at the moment. You're running on fumes, and so you're not going to be your best self. You're not going to be the most help to people, and you're not going to be able to bring as much to the table as you could do if you were keeping some of that overflowing cup to yourself. So you have that overflowing cup, you have this potential to have all of that and to be able to give out. See, this is the thing, is that when you really look at this card, is that the cup is overflowing, and that's why it's pouring out. And so really, if we look at that card in that context, if we keep the cup overflowing, if we don't kind of pour all of that water out the cup, if we find a way to keep the cup constantly kind of filled up, then it can water all of those plants below. The plants need constant water, but if we just pour all of that water out onto the plants below, if we kind of water them really, really well, okay, great, but now we've got no more water, and eventually those flowers are going to need more water, and we're not going to have anything to give them because we've just given it all away straight off the bat. So there are our first three cards. Well, number one, quite a powerful first three cards that we have here. And then I pulled you some additional cards. And the first card that I pulled for you, and I mean, I kind of laughed to myself when I pulled it, because it just really cements the message that we've already received here. And this is the Five of Swords. Now, in this particular deck, what we have here is this wonderful kind of a golden, kind of majestic looking sword here. And then we have these four behind it. And these four behind it are all kind of, you know, they're rusty, they're brittle, they're kind of falling apart a little bit. And you've got this kind of lovely, beautiful, alive flowers at the bottom of this sword. And the ones at the back are kind of dying off. And we have this kind of rope that is tying this sword to all of these other swords. And so, a couple of things here. Firstly, we have all of these swords here, and if we look at them, they are kind of, they're in it, are they feeding this sword, or is that sword feeding them? But there is a bind between them, essentially. And what we need to work out is whether you are this sword or whether you're one of these swords, okay? And I think to a degree, you're both. And hear me out here for a second. So number one, we can look at this a little bit like the parasitism card, because we have this sword that is gaining all of its life force and its energy, and it's just looking its best self, yeah? And then we have these swords around it that are just dying off, and it's almost like it perhaps sapping all of their energy. And in that way, when we look at it that way, it's very similar to that parasitism card, in that this is using the energy of the others for its own gain. And so, especially because we also have the Two of Cups, which we'll talk about in a moment, and the parasitism card is very much about this kind of relationship, partnership kind of thing, and a few other cards which we'll talk about as well. I do wonder whether there is somebody in your life who is taking a lot of your resource and your energy for their own gain. And, you know, unfortunately, there are situations and relationships where, you know, if somebody is very comfortable taking from you and they know that they're getting what they need out of you, then they're not necessarily going to ask too many questions. And, you know, we do have generally in this world people who are quite comfortable with giving and people who are quite comfortable with taking. And this is kind of a dynamic that we see in a lot of relationships. And we're going to talk about this a little bit more when we get to the Six of Pentacles, which is coming up as well. But with this in particular, when we need to think about this dynamic of giving, and somebody taking, is there somebody in your life who is at the moment quite comfortable allowing you to keep giving, allowing you to exhaust yourself, allowing you to deplete yourself because it suits them, because they are getting something out of it, because they continue to boost themselves up or to grow or to kind of basically get their needs met, while you continue to just exhaust yourself and deplete yourself and feel, you know, ultimately you're going to feel stuck, yes, but you're perhaps also going to feel things like unfulfilled, unsatisfied, and, you know, those kind of negative feelings and emotions, which are not good for you. They're not positive, and they're not the way that you should be living your life, because you matter, you are important, just as much as anybody else, just as much as the other person who you are building up in the ways that you are destroying yourself in a way. And so we have that side of the Five of Swords, which we will touch on a little bit more when we get to the Six of Pentacles. But for now, let's go back to this card and revisit it in the reverse. So we have these four swords here, these four swords that are not looking in a great condition. They are grey, they, you know, they're muted as well, where this is quite shiny, they've gone really dull, and you can just see that they're kind of breaking away. And the thing about these swords is that we have all of these flowers around them that are dying as well. And so, again, what this comes back to, it kind of comes back to the same point that I've already made with this card, but from a different direction. And so this is this gorgeously shiny gold sword, and around it you've got those flowers that are just flourishing in its presence, right? And it is tied to these other swords that are just killing everything around them, that are not, they're not the same, they're not at the same level as that sword. And yet this one is just, it's bound to these others, and it can't even move because it is literally being pulled in four different directions by these four other swords. And these four other swords are basically ruling and controlling this one. But this one is so much more beautiful, so much more powerful, so much more incredible than those other swords, and yet it is being ruled and controlled by these ones. And so what I would kind of ask you here, pile number one, is why are you allowing yourself to be put in this position by other people? You know, are there people around you right now who are just draining you, who are demanding of you, who are, you know, making you feel like you're not enough, or making you feel like you have to jump through hoops to be considered worthy or to meet their needs, or that, you know, these are things that are your obligations or your responsibilities? If people are doing this to you, are these people worthy of the weight that you are giving their opinions and their demands? Are they in a position where they should be able to make these demands of you, or to control you, or to push you into a box, or to make you feel a certain way about yourself? Why do these people hold that power? Should these people hold that power? Because from where I'm standing, based on these cards, I don't know that they should be. I don't know that they should have this level of control over you, because there is this strong presentation of like, look how incredible you are, and yet you are being tied to these kind of connections and these people and these demands that are just almost beneath you in a way. It just feels like it's almost beneath you. And I know that sounds a little bit bad, and I don't mean it to be, but it's how it feels. It's like, it's basically like saying, like, look, this is you and this is them. Really? Like, really? Like, think about it, okay? Think about it. And so this brings me on to the Six of Pentacles. And so the Six of Pentacles is generally a card of giving and receiving. So the traditional Rider-Waite interpretation of this card, the imagery on this card is normally somebody who is kind of giving out money to people who need it, to the people who are kind of begging for it. And obviously there can be some really good sides to that, but in essence, what the card is always about is about giving and receiving and the dynamic between those two. And we've talked about this already. So in relationships, the healthiest relationships have a balance of giving and receiving between both parties, as in both parties give and both parties receive. So both parties put something in, put effort in, put time in, put energy in, put their emotion in, put resources in, put whatever it is into that relationship. And they equally get something out of that relationship in return. You know, you don't want to say that you always have to give. What am I getting out of it? What am I getting back if I'm going to give? You don't necessarily want that, but it's about, knowing that that relationship serves some kind of purpose for you as well as it does for the other person. So it's about that give and take, having a degree of balance. Yes, in relationships, sometimes somebody's in a bad place, and so they give 50% and the other person gives 150% to make up for the lack of what they're putting in. But then equally, when the tables turn and then the other person can't give 100% or 150%, and then they're giving 75%, and so the other person gives 125%. There is this constant offset of balance between two people that makes a relationship healthy and fair and allows it to sustain, and it sustains both people, and the relationship grows and builds and becomes stronger for it. So that is the basic premise of the Six of Pentacles. But when we see the Six of Pentacles, more often than not, it is an indicator that that balance of giving and receiving is not right currently. That balance of giving and receiving is off. We are, generally either giving too much or taking too much, and it is perhaps causing our problems. And so more often than not, we do generally see this when somebody is giving too much rather than somebody who is receiving too much. And so with this particular situation, the particular reading and this context, it really does seem to lean towards that you are maybe giving too much to people. We've talked about it with the Ace of Cups and with the King of Cups with no water in his cup. That idea that we literally are just giving out of ourselves to the point where we have nothing left. And so this is the core principle of the Six of Pentacles. It's that, we can't continue to give out without receiving back something, whether that's from ourselves or whether that's from other people. We need to receive back, because otherwise we just give and give and give, and then it's gone. And then, it's just gone. If we look at it from the Pentacles often has a financial context. So if we put it in that context to understand the principle, if you have a certain amount of money and you give all of that money away to somebody else, you now don't have any of that money. Whereas if you find a way to sustain yourself at that level of wealth and give a portion of that away to help other people, you can continue to give that money over a prolonged period of time. And that over time, you could end up giving more than you did when you just gave all of that money away, because you now have no money to work with. You may have been able to use that money for multiple things. If you could have made it work for you, if you could have built on that, if you could have, found a way to sustain it so that it was able to give and continue to feed over a prolonged period of time. Whereas when it just goes in one lump sum and it just disappears, gone, that's it. You can't do anything more with it, it's gone. And so this is the kind of thing that we need to look at with your time and your energy and your resources, whatever the context is in the way that you are giving, is that you need to find a way to sustain your ability to give to others, because currently it's more like you're just giving until you've just got nothing, and then that's it, you're just running on fumes. Whereas if you can find a way to kind of keep yourself at your best, then you can continue to give. Yes, you may not give as much in one go, but the fact that you can sustain it means that you are going to give so much more in the long run. And that's the important thing, is that you can perhaps give more if you don't give so much in one go. If you find a way to balance it and you find a way to feed yourself, the more that you can feed yourself, the more you can then feed back out to others. And so that's the important thing. And the other thing that I have here with this card is that we have these, so we have 3 pentacles that are forming this kind of tree root, this kind of trunk almost. And then on top of it, we have these 3 lovely gold coins. And so it talks about not only this giving and receiving thing, but it's almost like creating the foundation upon which this is then built. And so when we combine these things all together, what I would ask you is, currently, are you kind of using your resources? And when I say resources, I mean more than just material resources. I mean, you know, all of your capabilities, you know, your emotional capacity and bandwidth, your empathy, your time, your space, your energy, your everything. You know, are you using that currently to kind of hold up, sustain, and kind of build other people's goals, and not really doing that for yourself? So at the moment, that may be why you're feeling a bit stuck, is that currently you're basically investing all of your resources in somebody else's vision, in somebody else's goals, in somebody else's dreams. And so you don't have the bandwidth to unstick yourself in your personal life, in your personal goals and your personal desires, because you are currently propping up somebody else's goals and desires, because you are giving so much away. And that is, again, going back to that key idea of giving too much away and just needing to set some better goals for yourself and make them a priority and make yourself a priority. And so if all of this wasn't clear enough, we then have the 2 of Cups. And so the 2 of Cups is a card of partnership, and it's a card of connection. And so it's generally a very positive card. But what we have here is we have these 2 fish who clearly come from these 2 different cups, who have jumped out of their respective cups to meet each other. And so we talked about this idea of giving and receiving. Now, part of that idea of giving and receiving is about compromise and about meeting people halfway. And so what you are being called to do here is really look at the people in your life and think about who is willing to meet you halfway. Are there people willing to meet you halfway? Or is this constantly you jumping out of your cup or your fishbowl and going into the other person's fishbowl because that's their comfort zone and that's what they need? And you're constantly the fish out of their own water, having to assimilate and having to kind of push yourself into somebody else's world. Well, this isn't giving and receiving in equal measure. This isn't compromising, and this isn't finding somebody who is willing to go that extra mile for you, which you also deserve, you know. And it's not about you taking and taking from somebody else and depleting and exhausting them. No, it's not about that. And I don't think that you would ever do that, because it doesn't look like you're that kind of person. What I'm talking about here is just finding relationships and people who are willing to put in as much as you are, who are willing to kind of say to you, you know what, actually, you have done enough. I'm going to do this, and to kind of proactively invest in your relationship with them. And this isn't just about romantic relationships. This is all types of relationships. This is friendships. This is family members. This is, you know, people that you work with. If somebody is constantly all about, I'm doing this on my terms and you're going to have to come and meet me where I'm at, and you're going to have to do this and that for me because I need you to do this and that for me, and whoa, you're asking me for that? That's selfish. Well, those kind of relationships are just not going to work. You know, they're constantly exhausting you and depleting you. And so if that's the kind of dynamic that you've got with people, you're really being called and asked to really think about these relationships and the dynamics that you have with these people, and really reflect on whether these relationships are fair and whether they're the relationships that you want to have. You know, are you doing this? You know, why are you doing this? Why are you in these relationships? What are you, you know, I know this can sound a little bit bad, but what are you getting out of it? You know, what are you getting out of these dynamics? You know, what is it that you stand to gain by being in a relationship with this person, whatever that relationship may be? And if you're not getting anything, why are you doing it? You know, that's the important thing to consider here. And so that brings me on to the High Priestess, which we haven't quite talked about yet. And so the High Priestess is a card of inner knowing. It's a card of intuition, and it's a card that's calling you to trust your gut. You know, we talk about intuition and things like that. We all have that sense within us. Some of us are more tapped into it than others, but we all have it. And, you know, I think a lot of people find it easier to look at the idea of kind of gut feeling than intuition. I think, you know, it's generally a very accepted term to say, you know, I trusted my gut on this, but it's the same thing, really. Our intuition and our gut is exactly the same thing. And so you're being called to trust your gut, to trust your inner knowing and your intuition in this situation. And so when we have this, and then we also have hiding in plain sight, this oracle card here, I feel like this is a bit of a calling out moment, and so bear with me. But I feel like you already know how to get yourself unstuck from this situation. I think you already know your way out of this situation and how to fix it. And so, I mean, the message that we've had so far as to why you're in this position, why you're feeling stuck, is abundantly clear. And with these two cards, I feel like it's already abundantly clear to you what the situation is, why you're stuck, and how to get yourself out of it. And so the question is, why aren't you getting yourself out of this situation? You know, what is keeping you stuck? You know, in the sense of what's keeping you in this situation when you already know the solution. So what I get the sense of, and obviously it's a general reading, so do take what resonates and leave what doesn't. But when we have the Two of Cups, it's generally a very positive card. But in this particular deck, we have this Cupid's arrow, and the Cupid's arrow is snapped in half and it's broken. And so within this whole context, and in the experience that I've had with this card appearing, it's often a sign that there are relationships that maybe need to come to an end. And bear in mind, we don't have major arcana cards in this reading. You know, we don't have cards like Death or the Tower, or, you know, something like that would kind of indicate that there's some massive fundamental relationship that needs to come to an end. But effectively, it's almost like cord cutting is kind of coming to my mind in a way here. It's like these, or perhaps these kind of connections and relationships that aren't necessarily the biggest ones in your life. They're not the most meaningful relationships in your life, but they are relationships that you kind of know need to come to some kind of resolution and some kind of conclusion. And I know that sucks, but the cards that I've got here, there's almost a sense here of, that these relationships aren't working. That these dynamics aren't working for you. And for you to really give this your, for you to put yourself in a position where you feel that you can truly find relationships that are balanced, that are based on, real mutual effort and understanding, respect, then there are certain relationships that aren't going to fit into that world. And I think in a way it doesn't feel as painful, because I almost don't think that there's a shock factor to that. I don't think that there's a fear to that in a way, in the sense that if somebody is constantly draining you and constantly depleting you, any kind of foundation that relationship is based upon is going to be a little bit weak, and therefore it's going to be a little bit easier to break that foundation, because there almost isn't this true connection there. And that doesn't mean that it's not easy, and it doesn't mean that it's not hard, but it's almost like there is just a knowing. I almost get the feeling, especially with this, the loudness and the clarity with which this message is coming across. I almost feel like you may already have known this for a little while, and you may have already kind of come to this conclusion, and so you've had some time to come to terms with this, and so it doesn't quite have the same pain level. And I think in eliminating some of these relationships from your life, you're going to have more resources in yourself. You're going to stop feeling so depleted and so exhausted, and so it's going to invite in some wonderful things into your life and free up your energy and space in your life for people who truly deserve a place in your life, who are people who will give you the relationships that you deserve. They're there. It's possible to find them, because we have the Ace of Cups, and the Ace of Cups is all about this potential for relationship and connection and depth and emotion and love and all of these things. So the potential for these things is there, and it's just a case of creating the space for that, to allow that to enter your life. And so we then have this: until all are free, none are free. And so again, it almost at the moment feels like you are caging yourself a little bit, trapping yourself a little bit in kind of the situation that you're in. Again, I feel like your path out of this situation, and so it's almost like you're trying to help other people and get other people into a position where they are at their best. Perhaps this is the same people, perhaps it's maybe not a painful idea that you need to walk away from somebody, but there is that desire to help people and to give to people. The generosity that I spoke about at the beginning, the King of Cups, is somebody who wants to help people. And so perhaps there's a feeling of wanting to do that and keeping yourself trapped in this situation because you're trying to help people. It's not helping you. And until you are in a position where you are kind of liberating yourself, then you're never going to see the conclusion and the satisfaction of helping people, because you're always going to still feel exhausted at the same time and feel stuck. And that's not going to help you. And so finally, our last oracle card, before we talk about our last tarot card, is Love Garden. And so again, this is another reinforcement of how much love you have inside of you. You have such a big heart, and it's a wonderful thing. It's about learning how to tend to that garden and how to nourish it and how to take care of it so that more love can grow from it. You know, you have the potential to build such a beautiful, love-filled life, but because you're constantly giving your love out to people who can't help you tend to that garden, you are currently in a position where that garden is probably not feeling like this beautiful place that we have in this image here. It's not feeling like this beautiful, well cared for garden of love. It's not feeling nourished. It's not feeling beautiful because you're not cultivating relationships with people who will help you cultivate this garden of love in your life. And that's who you need to surround yourself with, people who want to be part of that garden. And if they're not willing to be part of that garden with you, if they just want to kind of sit in the garden while you do all the work, then they're not the people that you want as part of this garden of love that is your life. And so then our final card is the Seven of Pentacles. And so the Seven of Pentacles is a card that is all about sowing seeds and waiting for things to pay off. And so there is a reminder here that if you're looking for the right kind of connections, these kinds of connections may not necessarily happen for you overnight, and that's okay. You know, you may not necessarily find your tribe, you know, your people who are the same as you, who are like-minded, who can give you everything that you want from these relationships and that you should get from these relationships, but you have to start sowing the seeds to find the right relationships. And there's a reminder here as well that not all seeds are destined to grow into beautiful trees. That's why we generally plant more than one seed, is because one may grow beautifully and the other may not, and that's okay. But we have to almost kind of sow multiple seeds and tend to them all, and then as ones along the way don't look like they're as successful as the others, we kind of clear some space in our garden, to use that metaphor again. We clear some space in the garden so that that tree that is now growing beautifully from the seed that we planted can continue to grow and become more beautiful. But if we don't give it the space it needs to do that by getting rid of the ones that aren't doing so well, then that tree is not going to become the beautiful tree that it is, and we're not going to end up with that beautiful garden as I talked about before. So it's about those kinds of things and creating your kind of your garden of relationships, your future and the way you want it to look and the life you want to lead and the circle you want to have. You're in control of shaping that and creating that. And I think that's why you've got a couple of pentacle cards in here as well, is because this is really about tangibly creating that life for yourself. And finally, this is about sowing the seeds that you want to sow. Basically, what is it that you want to do? You need to start putting time, effort, and energy into the things you want, not into the things other people want, or into supporting other people so that they can plant their own seeds. You need to start planting yours, because you need to start making yourself a priority, because you are worth it. You're worth making yourself a priority for. And yes, we can find relationships with people who are going to be so much more committed and so much more generous than people that you've maybe dealt with in the past. But it's also not their responsibility to make you a priority. It's your responsibility to make you a priority. And if you can't do that for yourself, how can you expect others to do that for you? But ultimately, you are just a person filled with so much love You have so much love to give, and I just really hope that you can find a way to give it to the right people and to balance that and give some of that back to yourself, because even if you give a fraction of that to yourself, that's a lot, because you have a lot to give. And I just think that is such a wonderful message, and you just seem like such a lovely pile of people, and I just really hope that you can feel that in you rather than trying to give that to other people, because if you can feel that in you, then naturally other people around you will start to feel that too. So that has been your reading, pile number 1. If you want to kind of follow me, if you want more content like this, then click that subscribe button, and you can also follow me over on Instagram. It is at queen.of.arcana. The link will be down below. If you could like this video, comment if this resonated. I would really, really love it. If you want to share this with somebody, if you feel like this video could be useful for somebody, that would be great too. Thank you so much for watching this video, for your time. I really hope this is helpful to you. Have a wonderful day. So pile number 2, if you picked this gorgeous little piece of apophyllite, then this reading is for you. I'm going to hold this just a little bit closer to the camera so you can have a look at this, because it is absolutely gorgeous. Let's see if I can get this in the shot. So I picked it up this week, obsessed with it, can't get enough of it. So if you pick this beautiful little crystal, this reading is for you. So we have a lot to unpack here, pile number 2. Let's start with this row of cards that we have in the the top row of 4. And these are the 4 cards that I pulled for the pile that you picked at the beginning of the video. And we have the Magician and Temperance as our 2 tarot cards, and we have Butterfly Dreams and an Answer But Not the Solution from the Oracle deck. In this reading today, I am using the TrueBlack tarot deck and the Visions in the Liminal Space Oracle deck. I love them both. They are amazing decks. And what struck me the first the instant that I pulled these cards was the symmetry that we have between the Magician and Temperance. So Temperance, we obviously have this idea of balance, and this is very much depicted in a yin and yang sense. When we look at this card, you've got the yin and yang symbol at the top there, but you've also got this yin and yang idea here as well. Gorgeous, stunning card, beautiful card. And then we've also got the Magician. And so the Magician, although it's not a card of balance, here we have this as above, so below, which we get with the Magician in most decks, is that idea of as above, so below. So you've got that in the way that he's got his hands there. And you've also got the minor arcana behind him here, which you've also got the swords versus the flowers behind in Temperance here as well. So we've got a real visual symmetry between these 2 cards, which is really, really interesting. And so what we've also got as well, just as another one to point out, is you've got the infinity symbol there as well, which has a little bit of that cyclical balance feel to it, which we've also got in an Answer But Not a Solution, but we'll talk about that in a moment as well. And we've also got this golden orb in the center, where we had the red and the white orbs in the hands of Temperance. So we have this there's lots of visual identifiers between the 2 that are quite similar and quite interesting. And so what struck me here is that we have this there's almost like a desire for more balance and harmony in our life. And I'm wondering whether we're going about getting it in the right way. And so that brings me on to our 2 oracle cards that we have in the center here. So we have Butterfly Dreams and we have an Answer But Not the Solution. So the Answer But Not the Solution, again, this whole idea of, are we approaching this in the right way? that comes up here. But then we also, with the butterfly dreams, are talking about the journey that a butterfly goes on from the caterpillar to being in the chrysalis to emerging as the butterfly. And so something that I think is quite important to note here, pile number 2, is that I do think that you have been experiencing a difficult period of your life. And the reason why I say this is because very much this image focuses on the journey of the butterfly. And so when we talk about the journey of the butterfly, in particular, what we're talking about is when it goes into that chrysalis as the caterpillar and it emerges as the butterfly. Now, in the chrysalis, I find butterflies really fascinating for this. It's because butterflies are quite a symbol of transformation. And in that chrysalis in which it transforms into the butterfly, it doesn't just grow wings. You know, the caterpillar doesn't just put itself in a chrysalis, grow some wings, and off it flies. The caterpillar literally dissolves its entire body and rebuilds itself as the butterfly. So there is this real sense that the butterfly, in order to emerge the beautiful, majestic, free, liberated creature that it is, it has to go through something that is quite an ordeal. It goes through a real kind of moment of reckoning. It goes through a painful experience in order to become the thing that is its greatest potential. You know, we don't look at the caterpillar and think, the caterpillar's doing all right as he is. You know, we want the caterpillar to realize the full potential and freedom of being the butterfly, because the butterfly is what it was always destined to become and what it was always supposed to be. And that is you, pile number 2, right now. You are becoming the butterfly that you were always supposed to be, but you are currently in the chrysalis. And so what I want to kind of mention here is, at the moment you might be feeling a little bit stuck, but I actually am unsure as to whether you are actually indeed stuck. Okay, so going back to that butterfly dreams, we also have the 8 of Swords. And so in this particular deck, when we have the 8 of Swords here, it talks a little bit like, it talks about a bit of a reckoning. Okay, so it's very different to a lot of other decks' interpretations of the 8 of Swords, where you've got that idea of restriction and limitation and all of those things. We can bring that into it in a moment, but more importantly, what we've got here is this sword that is hot. It has been forged under intense heat, which is the case with swords. But where you've got this sword behind it here, that one is entirely breaking away. That sword could not withstand the heat that it faced. And so essentially what this card shows up to represent is when we have indeed been that sword that is being forged under intense heat, and that is becoming, you know, the stronger the heat that it is forged under, the stronger the sword, the better the sword. The, you know, it's essentially, it's talking about that difficult period that you may be enduring is a period of time that is creating the person that you were always supposed to be. And unfortunately, those things don't happen generally through periods of really nice, rosy, wonderful time. You know, we generally become stronger and kind of more evolved people. We grow in situations where we are faced with challenge, where we are faced with difficulty, where we are faced with hardship. And, you know, it sucks, and it doesn't make the hardship okay, and it doesn't erase the hardship, but it does give that hardship meaning. And so if you are feeling at the moment a little bit stuck, pile number 2, I really do wonder whether you are indeed in a position where you are as stuck as you think you are. I think maybe you've been somebody, you know, especially with these 2 cards, the Butterfly Dreams and the 8 of Swords, you may be somebody who has gone through a lot of difficulty and a lot of challenge in your life. And so maybe you're quite used to things moving in quite a pace or in quite an intense way. Or on the flip side, maybe you're somebody who has experienced periods where things haven't gone to plan, where things haven't moved the way you've wanted them to. And so you're kind of, there's a fear of being put into that same position again, of being stuck again and not wanting to be stuck and wanting to keep moving. But actually, what you're viewing as lack of progress, I don't think is lack of progress. I think it's a very necessary part of your journey right now. And if we can reframe that, then I think you maybe will have a better time and an easier path out of your stuckness if you can almost like embrace the moment rather than trying to get yourself out of it. Because if we look at the symmetry between Temperance and the Magician, Temperance is all about balance and kind of generally that feeling of harmony and things working kind of in kind of harmony with each other. But then we also have with Temperance that idea of kind of spiritual connection, divine guidance, and, you know, guardian angels and all of that kind of thing that comes with the Temperance thing as well, which we obviously have with these lovely angelic beautiful wings that we have here. But then with the Magician, it's very much about the tangible and about creating yourself and kind of putting the effort in and knowing that you have everything at your disposal to make stuff happen. It's very much that card that sparks manifestation and creation, which is very much kind of a card of wanting to create movement, but it's very self-motivated. And so there's a real opposing force between these two cards, because the Temperance card is less about us doing and creating and manifesting and moving and taking action. Temperance is more of a card of kind of inaction and peace and reflection and kind of creating that equilibrium, which generally comes not through motion, it comes through pause. You know, it almost reminds me, what's coming to my mind right now is, you know, those I don't even know what they're called, where you have the little marbles and they kind of, you set them off and they swing, and it's almost a little bit like a pendulum. So basically it's about finding your equilibrium, and if something is constantly moving, it will constantly continue to swing. The pendulum will continue to swing if it's still moving. It's only when it stops that it can find its equilibrium. And so for you, the challenge here is to indeed stop, to indeed pause, and to embrace the stuckness, shall we say, in order to find equilibrium in which you can become the person that you were always meant to be, the beautiful person that you were always meant to become, and that is inside of you inherently already. It's there and it is awakening at the moment, but it just, you need the time right now to find that equilibrium that we're looking for. You know, you are the pendulum, and right now you're doing this, but as you're pausing, as you're in this period of stuckness, you will come to an equilibrium. So that's the important thing to remember with these cards. And so going back to the Magician, in the Magician, you are in a position right now where you are almost trying to push yourself through the stuckness. And this may be through past experience, that you're somebody who is used to facing adversity and facing challenge. You know, if we go back to that Eight of Swords, this talks about being forged under great intensity and great hardship, and, you know, becoming stronger for it. And if this has been a repetition, if this has been a pattern in your life, that you have experienced difficulty and you've experienced pain and you've experienced hardship and you've just plowed yourself through, you've just got yourself to where you are right now because you've just had to deal with these things. You've gotten through challenge after challenge, perhaps, or maybe it's one big thing that you've had to endure, or that you've had to kind of get yourself through, and you got yourself to the other side, and you're in this kind of state where you need to almost you need to kind of make these things happen, and you need to kind of, you know, get yourself through things to get to a solution all the time. But actually, for you in this moment, by trying to be the person who is doing, by trying to be the person that kind of fixes and finds the solution and gets unstuck and gets moving again, you're almost making it more difficult to get to the true solution, because the solution is to embrace the moment and embrace where you are right now. And so that brings me back to our oracle cards, where we have an answer but not a solution. So we've just talked about the solution and the answer and all of that, and as I was saying it, I was like, we've touched on this card, we haven't fully kind of gone through it yet, but we have this card here, and it just reinforces what I was just saying, is that, you know, you're perhaps have always been your own answer to your questions and to your problems in life. You've found the answer to everything. And so you do, you know, we talk about the magician having all of the tools at his disposal to achieve what he wants to achieve. And you do have that. And to an extent, I think perhaps you already do have that belief in yourself that the answer will come from within you. You have the answers within you, and you can solve your problems, and you kind of have that belief and that confidence in yourself, I would think, most of you at least. And so with this card coming out as well, it's essentially reinforcing that idea that what you would traditionally think is an answer to your problem right now is not the answer to your problem. You know, you're actually, maybe you're feeling like you're stuck, but you're actually maybe not. And not only that, if you're truly in a place where you're not making progress, that lack of progress may actually be necessary. And so this brings me on to the Hanged Man, which is underneath here. So the Hanged Man is a card of pause, is a card of inaction, and generally it is a card of stuckness, and feeling stuck and being frustrated and all of those kinds of things. So we're talking about feeling stuck, and then we pull this card and it's like a real reinforcer. So I don't doubt, pile number 2, that you feel like you are really stuck. And so I'm not discounting that feeling whatsoever. But the whole thing about the Hanged Man is that we have 22 cards in the Major Arcana, and the Hanged Man is one of them. And so if we look at the Major Arcana as the Fool's Journey, as it is often known, because we start with the Fool and we go all the way to the World, which is that card of completion. So we have new beginnings, we have completion, we have this cycle that we cycle through in life. And all parts of that journey that we cycle through in life are necessary. And so just as the Magician is necessary, just as temperance is necessary in our lives, and even the Tower, as destructive and something that we don't want to see in a tarot reading a lot of the time, feels is with all its faults, shall we say, and the Devil with all of his faults, shall we say, with the toxicity that he can represent and all of those things. All of these steps on the journey are necessary. They all make up life. They are all necessary steps on the journey to get to the end. And so the Hanged Man, the period of pause and the period of inaction, is necessary to reach completion. And there is a reason why the Chariot, for example, which is a card of moving forward at pace, with determination, with focus, with drive, there's a reason why he is only one card of 22. And that's because we can't actually sustain that energy through our entire life. We need to have periods of intense movement. We need to have periods of consistent movement. We need to have periods of no movement at all in order to reach completion, in order to reach where we want to go. We need all of it to grow and to evolve. And so this period of time is exactly what you need right now. This is exactly where you need to be. You don't need to worry that you need to be further along or that you need to be somewhere else. You need to be where you are right now. And from this moment, you are going to emerge the butterfly that you were always meant to be. And I know I've said that before, but we also have the butterflies that are literally emerging from the feet of the hanged man. And so if it wasn't clear enough that we need that period of pause in order to then continue on to become what we were meant to be, it's then just reinforced right here, is that the butterflies come from the hanged man. You know, you as the butterfly comes from this moment. And so there is a real call here to surrender to this moment, to surrender to where you are right now, and to trust that the solution that you need to get yourself unstuck will come to you when you need it. It will come to you at the right time. And so you need to kind of trust that, because the magician, while we can look at him as being very much self-motivated, there is another side to the magician in the sense that he can also represent this, you know, God-like divine energy, because he is divine masculine. And so from that, we can look at this, you know, pure, universal, manifestational energy. And then when you combine that with temperance, which is this card, which very much is about spiritual connection, we need to start reframing where you are right now as, you know, we need to trust that the universe, that spirit, whatever that, you know, kind of spiritual belief is that you have, you know, ultimately what we're talking about is the same thing, whether we're talking about our higher self, whether we're talking about the universe, spirit, the angels, God, source, like whatever it is that we're talking about, it's the same energy that we're tapping into here. And it's about believing that energy is working for you, and it is working to your advantage, and that you can become your best self if you kind of embrace it and you kind of let it go, kind of let go of that need to control, and just trust that things will work out and that you will get where you need to go. And so that really is a key part of your message here, especially because we also have the Playing God Oracle card that we've got here. So you've got this kind of puppet string kind of image that you've got going on in this card. So again, it's that real sense of like, it's like you're trying to be the magician rather than allowing the magician to do his work for you. Because when we talk about having all of the tools at our disposal, yes, we can think about, I already have all the tools inside of me, and that's one side of the magician. But really, if we talk about him as being this power, this true power, this ultimate kind of source energy, which we can tap into, who will provide all of the tools that we need to get to where we want to go, we do not need to embody the magician. The magician will provide for us. So there is a real reframing here of the situation that you find yourself in, and how you're feeling about it, and also how you're feeling about your role in this situation. Because at the moment, it's almost like you're trying to solve your problem, but actually maybe there isn't a problem to solve, and maybe what you are perceiving to be a problem will cease to be a problem when you can learn to embrace, to trust, to surrender, and kind of wait to receive what it is that you need, and just essentially trust that you will receive what it is that you need in order to move forward at the right time. Because the other thing about this time is that this is giving you more time to know yourself, because we also have the Know Thyself Oracle card. And so with this in place, it's part of the reason why we often need to have a pause moment in our lives is because it gives us an opportunity to reflect. And so especially if you have been through a lot to get to this point, you need, you know, when you're going through things, you generally don't have the time to process what it is you're experiencing. You just kind of have to deal with what you're, you know, with the hand you're dealt. You kind of have to just roll with it. You have to get through it. You have to persevere, and you have to experience. And then once you've done all of that, that's when you get the opportunity to really look back and to reflect. And so I think that at the moment, this stuck period that you're in is giving you an opportunity to reflect, and it's giving you an opportunity to understand who you really are. And through that, that is a key piece of you becoming that butterfly version of yourself. Because if you don't know who you truly are at your core, if you don't know your true identity, how can you become that person? Because you don't know who that person is. And so even if it doesn't feel like this moment is doing anything truly for you, if you don't feel like you're getting anywhere, if you don't feel like this is kind of giving you anything more that you need, I think it is more than you realize. This is giving you an opportunity to really kind of integrate all of those experiences that you have had up until this point, which will then propel you forward and set you up in the best way to kind of achieve what it is you want to achieve. You know, I think ultimately, sometimes we look at certain things and experiences that happen in our life and we don't think that they're relevant or necessary, or we think they're a waste of time. But actually, oftentimes, things that we don't even realize were relevant to us, you know, would be relevant to us in the future, turn out to be really, really relevant. You know, it's almost like, you know, sometimes people go through a complete career change and they feel like everything that they've done, everything that they've worked on, everything they've built up until that point is a complete waste of their time now because they're starting from scratch somewhere else. Well, actually, no, because they might find that they can do something in a particular way and in a unique way, or they might need one of those skills that they picked up earlier on doing something else, and they can apply it to the thing they're doing as they change career and they go into something else. Something that they would never have known going into it they needed suddenly becomes really important, or it becomes a unique skill that they have which helps them in the future, and they had no idea it was going to be so relevant. And so this is really part of this, is that there may be pieces to this puzzle that you're not privy to, that may be reasons why you need this time and you need this experience. There may be things happening at the moment that you don't fully understand. It's almost like this feels like a real message from the universe of there is so much more that you don't know yet, that you don't need to know yet, but you almost just need to trust and embrace and have faith, and all of that will become abundantly clear to you in time. May not be abundantly clear to you right now, but that's okay. It doesn't need to be abundantly clear to you right now. And I really do get the sense here that the universe is conspiring for you. Spirit is conspiring for you. This is, you know, there is a desire for you to succeed, but it's also about succeeding in the right ways and in the ways that are actually truly meaningful to you. Because what we currently have here is the Six of Wands. And so the Six of Wands is a card of success and victory, yes. But it's, you know, you think there are multiple cards in the tarot deck that represent success, but they are different forms of success. And the Six of Wands, yes, it is a success, but it is not, it's not the true fulfilling kind of internal satisfaction level of success that other cards can demonstrate. It is a feeling of victory and success because other people perceive you to be successful. And so what I would ask you here is, in terms of what it is that you desire and the ways in which you want to move forward, the thing you want to do that you're feeling stuck in at the moment, what is it that is driving you forward currently? What would be success to you? How would you define it? Because currently, I'm wondering whether some of the ways that you would define success are actually about the ways other people will define your success, rather than about how you truly define success and what will feel successful to you, what will feel fulfilling to you, and what will make you happy. And that is more important than what other people perceive to be successful in you, because other people will all have different opinions about what success is for you, and their opinion on what success is for you is not the most important deciding factor on what that success is. Because if you're trying to please everybody else by making them perceive you to be successful, then ultimately you're not going to find the success that you actually want and that you actually need, because you're chasing a version of success that isn't yours. And so that brings me to this oracle card, which flipped out upside down. We have parasitism in the reverse, which is really interesting because this came out upright in the previous pile's reading, but we have parasitism in the reverse. So I do think, because we've talked about the hardships, we've talked about, you know, the chrysalis, the being forged under intense heat, and the feeling of stuckness, the feeling of pause. And so, and of course, also the idea of know thyself and those kind of things. I think ultimately you have, perhaps part of what you've experienced in the past is being taken advantage of, or kind of difficulties with people, you know, people who have done you wrong, especially because we also have they know not what they do, which we'll talk about in a moment. But ultimately, when we see this card upside down like this, I do think that you have come to a realization that there are people who are willing to take advantage of you and who are willing to kind of basically take from you more than is fair for them to do. And so perhaps part of your journey has been to retreat from some of these relationships, and maybe that's part of why you feel this need to find your solutions yourself, and you may find it difficult to surrender and trust because you very much have had to kind of find the solutions and find the answers within yourself, and other people kind of relying on somebody else hasn't gone so well for you in the past. But ultimately, these realizations have been really, really good for you. So, you know, if we look at the ways in which, if this card is upside down, is upright rather than upside down, this is just such an unhealthy dynamic. That person is literally depleting the other person of all their energy in order to fill themselves up. And these kind of connections and relationships, they're not going to allow you to be this version of yourself that you're supposed to become. You know, I feel like there is probably a big purpose for you in your life with a big capital P, because when we have things like the Magician and Temperance here, and this idea that the universe is conspiring for you, and to just have faith and trust that you are, you know, becoming this version of yourself you were always supposed to be. I feel like there is really something important that you are supposed to do with your life and your future. And so all of this experience is putting you in a position where you can do that for other people, but you've had to learn these lessons to get to where you are now and to get to where you need to go in the future. And so realizing these things is really important and really great for you, pile number 2, okay? These are really positive things that have come out of periods of great difficulty. And so, you know, as I said before, while it doesn't erase it, I think something beautiful is coming out of the experiences that you have had. And it's really just about trusting that. And finally, we have the They Know Not What We Do Oracle card. We have one final tarot card, which we'll talk about as well after this. But final Oracle card. This is a card where generally it appears when there are people who have done us wrong. And ultimately, I think a lot of the time when people when people do things to us that, you know, that maybe they betray us or they do something horrible, they cause something within us, you know, maybe they're a kind of root of our traumas or our, you know, behaviors or our triggers or something along those lines. We kind of get this feeling in our heads that these people have done these things intentionally or on purpose, or that there is this, you know, this sense within them that they know what it is that they have done to you and how they've affected you. And the thing is ultimately most people are so absorbed in their own lives because, you know, we are living our own life and we generally have all of these things in our brain going on in daily life, and everything just takes over and consumes us so much that ultimately most people are not aware of what they have done to you. You know, if there are people that have in particular hurt you or been the causes of certain experiences or have made certain difficult experiences harder for you in your life, you know, you can acknowledge what they've done, and that can ultimately lead to you having an understanding of this is not a healthy dynamic, this is not a good relationship for me, and setting those clear boundaries. All of that is great, you know, all of that is really good things to learn from it. But what we need to learn to kind of let go of is this belief that these people know that they have done us wrong and that they've done it intentionally and they know how they've affected you. You know, if there are people that have done things wrong and that you know you're not going to get an apology from them, or, you know, they haven't, you know, there are things that have happened and you haven't had the apology that you wanted, understanding that certain people are never going to give you that apology. It's about coming to terms with that and realizing that they're not doing that to spite you. They're doing that because they genuinely don't understand what it is that they have done to you. They don't realize, they haven't noticed, or they just can't see it in their own minds. They, you know, in their situation, they don't understand where, you know, what it is that they've done. And while that is not justified, while that may not necessarily be right, it's almost like you're almost punishing yourself by holding on to these things that have happened to you in the past, and to holding on to the pain that you are carrying relative to these people. These people, with the parasitism being reversed, I get the impression that a lot of them aren't really part of your life anymore. If they are still part of your life, they're people who, for the most part, are not really big influences of your life. You're quite aware of that dynamic and that relationship you have with that person. And excuse me, but if this is the case with all of these people, or, you know, maybe it's one particular person as well, because obviously this is a general reading, but, you know, with these people or that person, by holding on to it, you are really just punishing yourself, because they don't know what they've done. And you probably won't get the apology that you want from that person, but you can move forward without that apology. You can take the lesson that they've taught you, and you can focus on the ways in which this is going to make you the person you're meant to be in a good way. You can think about all those good things that have happened to you, or that will, you know, the ways in which you have become a better person for these things. And yes, it doesn't make it okay, but it does mean that something beautiful can come out of something ugly. And so realizing that these people don't actually deserve or warrant your time and your energy and your mental capacity is really, really important, okay? Really, really important. But these people have given you lessons. They've taught you something about yourself and about the world. They've given you a better understanding of who you are, who you want to be. And it's something really special, I think, is going to come out of all of this. I really do get that feeling from these cards. And so ultimately, the last card that we have is the Ace of Pentacles. And so I think you're somebody who isn't afraid of hard work, and that's a good thing. It is a good thing, but you have to learn when to push and when to not push. And currently, I do think this isn't necessarily a time that you need to push. But also what the Eight of Pentacles is about consistency. It's about consistent effort and doing things that are sustainable to get you to your destination, and putting in hard grind, basically hard work, hard graft. So, you know, we're talking about that Six of Wands and that idea of success. You know, maybe you had an idea that with whatever it is that you're currently feeling stuck with, that it would all come together for you much quicker than it has. And if it hasn't, this is a reminder that a lot of things, and especially the things that are most worthwhile in life, they do take time. You know, that the best things take time to grow. You know, a massive, majestic, beautiful tree doesn't become that overnight. It takes a lot of time. It takes years for that tree to become what it is. And so whatever it is you're building is important. It matters. And I think that you maybe need to reframe the idea that you're not necessarily going to kind of get to your destination immediately. This is going to take some time, and that's okay. And that where you are right now isn't stuck. It's not failure. You're probably still making progress. You're maybe just not seeing the progress that you want to see. And again, it's okay. It's okay to be where you are. And so that is really the main message that I'm getting with this card. But the other thing with this card is also about looking at not necessarily needing to look at the big picture all the time as well. This is very much about getting down to the details and, you know, being it's kind of a knuckling down kind of card. And where you look at things like the Magician, it's very big picture. It's very, you know, kind of looking at the full scope of things and, you know, looking at things from a very broad, wide lens. Well, in order to make progress with things, we need to look at those details. We need to look at the kind of the fine lines, and we need to look at the fine print. You know, it's kind of all about the nitty gritty of these things. And sometimes it's not about needing to do 2,000 things at once to kind of achieve this kind of massive grand scale plan. Doing one of those 2,000 things at a time, you'll eventually do those 2,000 things. And yeah, it may take a while if you're doing one at a time rather than doing 2,000 things at once, but you're a human being and you can't do 2,000 things at once. You can do one thing at a time. So, you know, be practical and be realistic about how much you can take on, because you're not superhuman, you're human. And that's okay. You don't need to be superhuman. You just need to be you. And truly, you're a beautiful person. You know, you are literally, this reading is comparing you to a butterfly, okay? We know butterflies are absolutely beautiful, and that's you, okay? You're the butterfly. So that has been your reading, pile number 2. I really do hope that this is helpful for you. If you enjoyed this reading, if it resonated, I'd love it if you could if you could comment down below, if you could share this reading with somebody if you feel called to. That would really, really, really mean a lot to me. You can also follow me on Instagram at queen.of.arcana. And if you want to subscribe to this YouTube channel and get more videos like this, that would mean so much to me as well. This has been such a pleasure. It's been such a beautiful reading, and I really do hope it resonates. If you want to book a personal reading with me, I would love to read for you. You can visit my website. That will also be in the description down below as well, and you can access that, book a reading. I would love to work with you. I would love to work with you. This has been so lovely, and I really do hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Pile number 3, my final pile. Here we are. This is your reading if you chose the Moss Agate. And so, wow. So we have had some intense readings, pile number 3. And then I've pulled yours and it equally has not disappointed. So what I will say about this particular reading and this spread of cards that we've got is that there are some similar points to the earlier two piles. So if you were drawn to one of the other piles as well as this one, I would seriously recommend you go back and listen to one of them or both of them if you were drawn to all three, because I do feel like this has some crossover that could be relevant to some of these other piles as well. But right, let's start pile number 3 with the 3 cards that I pulled when I was shuffling to lay out those piles that you picked from at the very beginning. So we have the 9 of Swords, we have No Vacancy, the Oracle card, and we have the Fool. So the decks that I'm using today, we have the TrueBlack Tarot deck and the Visions in the Liminal Space Oracle deck. I love both of these decks. They are absolutely wonderful. And so what we see with these 3 cards, if we talk about the tarot cards first, is that we have the 9 of Swords. Now, the 9 of Swords in particular in this deck, we have this white rabbit that has been impaled on a sword. And I think that the imagery of this is quite visceral, and it feels quite kind of strong when you look at it as to what it means. And it's generally what it shows, especially when we talk about some of these other cards, this is going to kind of back this up. This really indicates that you have experienced a really difficult period of time. The way this reads, and obviously it's a general reading, so take what resonates. But the way this reads, I think a lot of you, we're dealing with somebody in particular who has hurt you. We're dealing with I would think, a relationship, and obviously that does lend itself to being a romantic relationship, but it could be other types of relationship that are important in our lives. You know, you think of big friendships or you know, family members who are, you know, you're very close to, siblings and parents and all those kind of people. But somebody has hurt you, I get the impression, when I see this card. I mean, when I saw this, when I pulled these cards out, it felt difficult, it felt intense, it felt painful, more so than some other spreads of cards that I would see. This really felt kind of visceral. It felt like, you know, this card is really indicative of your feelings in the situation. And although you may have progressed past this point, this really is the root to your stuckness in the present moment. And so what we do have on the other side, and so to bring this into something a little bit more positive, we have the Fool. And the Fool is the ultimate card of new beginnings. And so I do think that you're on the precipice of getting yourself unstuck and getting yourself moving forward in a new direction. And the thing is I think that when you start moving in a new direction, it's going to be a completely new direction, okay? This isn't going to be something where you kind of, this doesn't feel like you're in the middle of something and you've hit a brick wall. This feels like something has come to an end and now you're feeling stuck before you progress in a completely new direction, a new beginning. Before you embark on a new journey, you're feeling stuck getting off the ground with that new beginning and that fresh start. You're not, it's almost like failure to launch, you know? It's like, that's the stuck feeling that I'm getting here, rather than you're halfway through something and you feel frustrated and stuck and like you're not getting anywhere with it. This is stuck in the in-between, stuck in the liminal space, to use the name of the deck, just kind of stuck in the in-between. And so that then brings me to the Oracle card that we've got here, which is No Vacancy. And so with this card being in the center, and notice that we have 4 cards in this middle row of cards here, and we have 2 that came out reversed and 2 that are upright. And so we almost have this like natural break down the middle of those 4 cards. And then we have this card that is smack bang in the middle of that break, and it is that No Vacancy card. And so what these 3 cards, the story they're telling me is that you may have got to a point where you are maybe not necessarily in the 9 of Swords pain and difficulty and hardship, but when we get to no vacancy, it's almost like we're still holding out hope for something, or we're struggling to let it go. It's like it's like knocking at the door of a place where we know that there is no vacancy, and kind of putting all of our hope on this thing that we know is never actually going to materialize the way we want it to. And so with this spread of cards, it's almost like we aren't stepping into this new beginning because we're almost kind of holding on to something that isn't going to work out the way we want it to, because it's kind of, the story's kind of already been told, and we've reached that point where we know it's not going anywhere further, but we're just holding on to it at the moment. And that is preventing us from fully moving forward with this new beginning that we're on the precipice of, that's right in front of us. And so, you know, the Fool is coming out as a real positive thing. And bear in mind, we also have at the top and on the right hand side 2 aces. So aces are also about new beginnings. So there is a real new beginning energy that we have with this reading, which we'll talk about more as we progress. But off the bat, this is the first thing that we're getting here, is there is something that has happened, something that was very difficult, and rather than moving on and kind of cutting ties from it and wiping the slate clean and moving forward with something new, we're still kind of holding out for it, and we're still holding on for it, or we're still holding on to the pain or the situation that has happened. We're not letting it go, and therefore we're not in a position of being able to move forward with something new, because we're still holding on to that thing that has happened to us in the past. So this then brings me on to our middle row of cards, where we have the 5 of Swords reversed and the Tower reversed. And so with the 5 of Swords reversed, I get the impression that you were previously, again, this is where I kind of get this relationship feel from, is because you've got this, if we look at it upright for a moment, we have this lovely, shiny, massive gold sword that looks absolutely wonderful. And it is surrounded by these horrible, dull, grey, brittle, falling apart swords behind it, and it's tied to them all. And ultimately, these swords being drained to fuel this one, or is this one being tied to these and limited and restricted because it's kind of being pulled into a situation with these other swords that it's really not the place for it to be. It's worth more than those other swords, and yet it's being tied to them in a way that is just not right. And so ultimately, this is why I think this is a very relational reading, because I get the impression that there has been a relationship and somebody has maybe let us down or betrayed us or hurt us, or, you know, we've got to the end, you know, a relationship's reached the end of its course and it's painful and it's difficult to let go of. But ultimately, I would question whether this relationship or this situation that you have found yourself in the past, obviously it's a general reading, this situation you found yourself in the past, I just wonder whether it really suited you, in the sense that, you know, were you accepting something that is less than what you're worth? And if that's the case, is that maybe the reason why this has happened, is to give you the opportunity to find what you're truly worth, and what you truly deserve? Whereas where you were before, you were accepting less than what you were actually worth and what you actually deserve. And that then brings me to the Tower. So the Tower has shown up in reverse, but when I look at reversed cards, I do look at the fact that that energy still exists within the reading. So in order to understand this card, we need to look at it as the Tower in the upright position first. And so the Tower is this card of destruction. It's this card where everything feels like it's falling apart and there is nothing that we can do to control it. There's nothing we can do to stop it. It's just happening. The building's just crumbling and, you know, we can't keep that building up. It's all just falling down and it feels very intense. It's an incredibly difficult card to deal with. And so the Nine of Swords with this does indicate that you have experienced something that is very difficult and has probably felt really scary and really just awful. It's just been a really difficult situation to deal with. And seeing that is hard and it is difficult. And I'm really sorry if this does resonate because it's not a nice couple of cards to be seeing. But I do get the impression that this is something that's already happened, which I'm not telling you something you don't already know. The thing with the Tower is that the Tower is a structure, right? And so if the Tower collapses, it means that the structure wasn't secure enough to begin with. The foundation it was built upon and the structure that was therefore built was not fit for purpose. And so when the Tower crumbles, it is making way for us to rebuild the foundations. You know, if there is a building and there is something that is wrong with the foundations, with the very structure it was built upon, then the only way to fix that is to bring it down and to rebuild it. I mean, I'm not somebody who's in construction or has any idea, so I'm not necessarily saying that that is right. But essentially, we have to go back when we see this card and we see the Tower. We are talking about the foundation that all of that was built upon was not built to last. And so that's why the Tower crumbled. And so we have space now with the crumbled Tower to build back better, to build better foundations that will then create something better on top of it, something that will last, something that isn't going to crumble because it has the right structure to begin with. It's the right thing. And it's so essentially the Tower is giving us an opportunity to build success upon the right structure, upon the right foundations. Whereas if we continued along the path that we were on, we weren't going to get the thing that we wanted, or the thing that we wanted would always be at risk. We'd never truly get that safe, secure success because there's always that potential that the Tower is going to crumble because the foundations were never right. And so when we pull this in reverse like this, there is, especially when we've got the no vacancy and especially when we've got the Four of Pentacles, which we'll talk about in a moment, there is a resistance to this because the Tower is something that we can't control. But I think a lot of us struggle with the idea of that, and a lot of us end up in situations where we try to control the outcome of something that we inherently cannot control. And so when we see this in reverse, it's like we are kind of struggling to embrace and accept that this thing that, you know, the Tower is crumbling or has crumbled, and there's nothing that we can do about that. And we need to just embrace it for what it is. And we need to embrace the fact that this thing that has collapsed and crumbled because it wasn't meant to last. It wasn't built to last. And it's so much better that the Tower crumbled when it did than if you kept going. Because think about it in this way. If the thing was never meant to last, how much worse would it have been if you'd have kept going with that inherently unstable structure for much longer? You would have wasted more time. You perhaps would have ended up in a much worse state, and it would have perhaps been more impactful had you have built more upon that structure. And so ultimately, it feels like there is a resistance to accepting that something has something's been brought down in your life, whether that's a relationship that has come to an end or a, you know, situation that has not worked out, or something like that. It's coming to an understanding that this thing hasn't happened to be a problem in your life. It's that age old, this isn't happening to you, it is happening for you, and you need to see that that's happening for you in order to move forward in the best way. Whereas currently we're kind of seeing that moment as something bad, and we're holding on to it as something bad, and it is preventing us from letting it go so that we can move forward. We're not creating space in our life for something new because we're still holding on to the kind of the ruins of the tower that has come down. But we're never going to rebuild that structure the way it was. And actually we almost need more radical and more dramatic change, I think, for you to have the best luck going forward, and for you to have the best kind of new structure. It has to be fundamentally different than the way it was before, and understanding that and recognizing that gives you your best chance to unstick yourself from where you are and move forward in a truly wonderful way, because there are some wonderful cards coming out for you as we move forward. But then, so the next card that we have is the Four of Pentacles, and this card really serves as a bit of a kind of reinforcement of what we've seen with the Tower being reversed, is that with the Four of Pentacles, it is a card where we are holding on to what we've got. And obviously in some ways that can be a good thing, because we're not losing what we've got because we're holding on to it. But what that also means is that we're not gaining anything either. We are just keeping everything exactly as it is. And so it is a bit of a stagnant card when we see the Four of Pentacles, and that would be where we're getting the stuckness from, of course. When we're feeling stagnant, we're feeling stuck, because, you know, you can see the cobwebs that are forming on here, and it's like this, you know, all of these things are kind of staying put. They're kind of wedged in the ground, they're not going anywhere, and they're stuck. And that's great because we're not losing those pentacles, but we're also not doing anything with them. We're not gaining any more. They're just sitting there. They're just stuck where they are. And so at the moment, it almost feels like, because we've experienced the Tower, and because we're almost kind of afraid to let that go and to truly embrace all that has kind of everything that has been lost, almost, to create space in your life. Because we're kind of holding on to those kind of fragmented pieces, yes, we're not losing those fragmented pieces, but it's keeping us so stuck that we then can't actually step into the potential that this Tower moment has created in your life. You know, there is a real wonderful sign that there is some beautiful things out there waiting for you to kind of take hold of, opportunities for you to seize that you're not, because you're kind of just staying put. And I don't know whether there's a fear of maybe losing more than what you've already lost, but I think it seems more like anything that you are losing at this point in time, you're losing it because it was never meant to stay, and because it's actually not the thing that you're meant to have. And really, with that Five of Swords in the reverse like this, I think the things that you were tied to in the past, and notice there were 4 swords they were tied to, and then we've got the Four of Pentacles here, and we've got that one in the middle, but it's those 4 that it's tied to, and we've got that. So with that in mind, these things that we're holding on to, and these things that we've felt tied to, that we've maybe lost or have been kind of pulled away from us or have crumbled in some way, I don't know that they necessarily were very good for you. I'd ask you that question. I'd ask you to consider that question, really. Is these things that you're holding on to, why are you holding on to them? What was it that you were getting out of that? You know, what is it that, you know, what was the value that it held in your life? And is there not something better? Are you not worth better? Do you not deserve better? And maybe when we look at it that way, we're not looking at it so much as what is lost. We're looking at it as what can be gained. And from there, I think we can start to really seize these opportunities that are in front of you. And I think once you do that, you will get yourself unstuck so quickly, because once you embrace it and once you make that decision to take that leap into the unknown and to really make the changes and start afresh and start anew, I think you're going to be so in alignment. I think this is going to go really, really well for you. That's the way it reads and that's the way it comes across, because the aces that we have, aces are wonderful cards. You know, they are generally seen as very positive cards. They are cards of potential of new beginnings. And so what I often look at is that the Fool is the major arcana card of the new beginnings. And then when we come to the suits in the minor arcana, these aces are almost like these different aspects of the Fool that we can look at. So we have the Ace of Pentacles and we have the Ace of Wands here. So it's interesting because they almost have a bit of a complementary yin yang kind of feel to them, the Pentacles and the Wands that we've got here, because the Wands is all about kind of that initial spark of something, you know, because the Wands relate to the element of fire. So it's all about quick, hot, passion, excitement, drive, intensity, and all of those wonderful kind of things. It's fun, it's playful, it's, you know, it's that kind of intangible, kind of everything's so exciting and good and it's all happening so fast and it all just feels good and we're not really overthinking it too much. It's just really, really good in the moment kind of spark, you know. Then when we have the Ace of Pentacles, Pentacles are to do with the earth. So we could look at the Ace of Pentacles like a seed. And when we think of Pentacles, it's a very slow moving suit. So generally something that is the new beginning of the Ace of Pentacles is like a seed that we plant. And like a seed we plant, this isn't something that will happen overnight. It won't happen very, very quickly. This is something that has the potential for longevity and has the potential to be successful if we work at it. And so when we've got these two, you have the potential for something that will really light you up, but also something that has the ability to last. And so with these two aces, I think that you just have such a wonderful potential in front of you. And it's there, it's right in front of you. I mean, the Ace of Wands is like right on top of no vacancy. It's right in the middle. It's right at the top of this reading. And it's like saying this is literally staring you in the face for you to take the opportunity and run with. You know, this is literally dangling in front of you and currently you're not seizing it. And that's why you're feeling stuck. But it's like right there for you to take. Right there for the taking. And then we have three more oracle cards that we have here. So we have Love Garden, which came out for one of the earlier piles as well. And so Love Garden, in this sense and in this situation that we have here in the context of this reading, what we are being shown is this. When we relate this to the Tower and we talk about that idea of a structure coming down because the foundations weren't right to begin with, we then have this card coming out to kind of show you that you can create what you want from this present moment. What you're presented with right now is like a clean slate. It's like a fresh start. It's a blank page for you to create whatever it is that you want from here. You can go and do whatever it is that you want. And, you know, it really does feel like a complete new beginning for you, and quite radically a new beginning for you with the Tower and the Fool. And with the aces as well. This is just, you know, real fresh start, new beginning. And you can create what you want. So, you know, you can create the garden that you desire. You can tend to it, you can cultivate it, you can plant what you want in there, you can create something that is beautiful to you because it's yours and because you're in control. And that's a really important thing for you to remember. And the other thing about that is that you can create something that is based on love. And so if we are talking about relationships here, and we are talking about a relationship in particular that has ended and the potential of a new relationship going forward, is you can create a partnership that is based on love, that is truly full of love. And, you know, perhaps that's not what you were getting from this past relationship. And although you may have had an attachment to that person, and there's a connection there because you have an attachment and a bond, and you've, you know, built that connection over time. And of course that does create bonds in relationships, but this is giving you an opportunity to create a relationship that you truly want, that you're truly worthy of, and that you truly deserve. And, you know, this is really your opportunity to find that. And at the moment, the only person holding you back from that right now is you. Because it's there, it's almost staring you in the face. I always feel like it's possible that if you're somebody who is resonating with all of that about a relationship, there could well be somebody at the moment in your life that has caught your eye, or that is interested in you, and you're not proceeding with it for some reason because you're feeling, you know, you're still kind of holding on to what has happened in the past. But this has potential for you, and if you don't seize that, then you can't move on and move forward, and ultimately you're just continuing to keep yourself in a cycle and in a feeling of pain and difficulty that you don't belong in and that you don't deserve. And so then the other thing that we've got here is the you may never know card. And so if within this situation, if there have been things that have happened that you don't really have all the answers for, that don't really feel like you've had closure on as well, that could be the case for a lot of you with the tower being reversed and all of these cards, is that maybe that's part of why you're holding on to what's happened, is because you've not actually been able to have true closure on the situation. And ultimately what you're being called to kind of recognize is the parts of this situation where you may never get closure. And even if you don't have all the answers that you were seeking about this situation that has happened, even if you don't have everything fully resolved, that shouldn't stop you from moving forward and starting afresh and starting anew. Because while you're waiting for more clarity and more answers, or while you're trying to kind of get the resolution and the kind of closure that you want on this situation, you're missing out on starting something new. And actually, once you start this new beginning, it feels so positive and it feels so completely different from where you've been. I don't even know whether it will matter to you anymore. You know, it's one of those things where when you're truly over something and when you truly move on from something, it becomes a lot less important in your life to kind of have the closure and to have all the answers on it, because it doesn't really affect your present day and your present life anymore, because you're so far moved on, you're so far evolved from that point in your life, and it just kind of doesn't feel relevant to your situation anymore. And I feel like that's possible for you moving forward, is to get to a point where this whole situation feels completely irrelevant to your present. And I think that that is really wonderful in itself, okay? And our then final oracle card that we have here is Esse quam videri, and what this means is to be rather than to seem. And it's about embodying and being just at your core something rather than kind of faking it in a way. And so what I would ask you here is, have you kind of been kind of going through the motions of saying, you know, I'm over this situation, it doesn't bother me anymore, it's not important, blah, 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 I'm kind of, you know, I'm done, I'm over it, that kind of thing. But truly, have you really dealt with it on the inside? Or have you kind of been stuffing it down, trying not to deal with it, or trying not to face it because it's difficult? And if so, that could be part of what's holding you back, is because you're not really facing it head on and you're not dealing with it head on. But if you can do that, and you can truly be okay and truly be over it, then you can move forward and embrace this new beginning and all the potential that it provides you, with real kind of a zest for life and real positivity and just such wonderful things. But it's about really truly being okay with what has happened and being over it, and just truly embodying that, rather than kind of trying to make, almost like trying to make everybody else kind of feel like or think that you are okay with what has happened and that you're kind of over it and you've moved on. But just truly embodying that within yourself, because ultimately it doesn't really affect somebody else's life in a truly fundamental way, the way it affects you, whether you are over this or not. It doesn't affect anyone else more than it affects you. And so being that is so much more important than seeming to be that. And so I know we've talked about these cards already, but I just want to end on these aces and the Fool. You know, this is a real new beginning time for you. And I really do hope that you can embrace these new beginnings that are coming your way, and it just feels like a completely fresh start, and I think it's exactly what you need. One thing I want to point out here with the Fool is that there is a butterfly on the eyes there, and what we also have in the Four of Pentacles is those butterflies that are stuck behind those cobwebs. And so if we can kind of release that hold that we have on what we're holding on to that isn't serving us anymore, that has already, the tower's already crumbled, and if we can release our hold on those pieces that we're trying to hold on to that are left, then those butterflies can fly free. And so you are it almost feels like you're trapping yourself a little bit, pile number 3, and you deserve so much more, and there is so much more out there waiting for you. And I really do feel like, you know, whatever it is that has been painful and that has been hard to kind of come to an end or to lose or to let go of, whatever that thing is, it is just such small fry when we compare it to what you can have going forward, because the Fool has that butterfly. The butterfly is this, you know, true stepping into that kind of version of yourself that you were always meant to become. You know, when we compare the butterfly to the caterpillar, the butterfly has so much more. It's so beautiful. It's got the wings, and it's liberated, and it's free, and it's all of those things. And so you're in a position now where you can be the butterfly, and what has happened to you up until this point, you've been the caterpillar. And so there is something so much more wonderful waiting for you. You've already become the butterfly now, but you need to set yourself free and take flight and truly embrace the butterfly that you are. So that has been your reading. Pile number 3, I really do hope this is helpful for you. As I said before, there is some real kind of similarities between this pile and some of the earlier piles. So if you did feel drawn to one or both of the earlier piles, I would really recommend you go back and listen to those as well. But it's been such a pleasure to read for you. If this has resonated, if this has helped, please do like this video, comment down below, subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more videos like this. You can follow me on Instagram if you would like to as well. The link for that will be down below. And if you would like to book a personal reading for me, I would love to connect with you more personally. You can see my website in the description down below as well. And yeah, it would be such a pleasure to read for you again. But this has been absolutely wonderful. I really hope it helps. Have a wonderful rest of your day.